o'clock, so I think we should go ahead and call the meeting to order. So this is Greg Jones. I'm the current acting acting chairman today, since Pam has been elected to the board of directors of the Hot Springs Village POA. She's no longer eligible to be the chairman of our committee, so I will have a new election. I know she's heartbroken. We definitely want to thank Pam for all the service she's done over the last couple of years while she's been on the committee, and we look forward to her return. I especially look forward to her return sometime in the near future. So I think we'll go around and just I'll just do a quick roll call just so everybody can see everybody. So again, this is Greg. This is Pam. You can see on the screen as well. Ella Scotty is also on the call. Ella, you there?
I'm here, and John Paul just joined us.
Okay, yes, John Paul, how are you?
Yeah.
Then I also have Sherry Nelson.
I'm here.
All right. David is here.
Here.
Yes. Which David?
Which David?
I see David Whitlow. I have another David as well.
Oh, okay. I'm here.
Who's the other David that's on here?
Child.
David Childs. David, are you there? Childs? I see Whitlow.
Here.
Yeah. Okay, there he is. Okay, all right. And then I've got Bob Petty.
Here.
All right, Bob. Got Kurt.
Here.
And then I've got, so we got the two Davids. Diana?
Here. Apologize for my appearance. I was busy doing other things and time got away from me and I didn't get myself looking real good.
All right. Sherry Nelson? You're on here? All right.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Jim Zahn?
Here.
Our speaker, are you here as well?
Yes, Pat Fitz.
Right.
I'm here.
Oh, great. All right. Good, good. Thanks so much for coming today. Really appreciate you coming. I've got Keith Keck.
Here.
Larry Rainey.
Here.
Michael Murphy.
Morning.
And is it Nancy Sherman? Who is that? Who is N. Sherman?
Nikki.
With the Village Voice, Nikki Sherman.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Okay. And did I get everyone? Is there anyone else on the call that I didn't call out?
Mike Hood.
Mike Hood. Oh, that's right. You're on the phone side. All right. Well, great. So thanks so much for everybody joining us today. We do have a guest today, Pat Fitz from the State Wildlife and Fisheries. So he's going to give a quick presentation, and I've got a quick bio here for Pat. I'm just going to read you just a little bit of this before, Pat, we turn over the program to you for this moment to give us a little bit of information about what's going on with Arkansas Game and Fish. Pat was selected as the 18th director of Arkansas Game and Fish in Nashville, Arkansas, began his career with the commission in 1983 while still attending high school. So he's been there a really long time. He actually said in his acceptance speech that he stated that the Arkansas Game and Fish had raised him from a kid to adult and has been an employee there for 35 years, only leaving a short time to attain his degree from Arkansas Tech University. So, Pat, I'm going to go ahead and turn over the program to you. And thanks so much for joining us today with our Government Affairs Committee for Hot Springs Village. We're obviously very interested in what's happening with Arkansas Game and Fish, as we do have a lot of lakes here, a lot of fishermen here as well. So we're very interested to hear kind of what you have to tell us today.
Well, I appreciate that, and certainly am honored to be asked to come join y'all today. And, you know, these are strange times we find ourselves in right now. And although it's the pandemic has created some challenges from an administrative standpoint with the Game and Fish, we still have a lot of very needed resource management going on around the state. And luckily for those employees that work remote, and that's most of our people in the field, this has not been much of a challenge. When you're doing habitat work on lakes, or you're doing food plot work on WMAs and things like that, that goes on in the summer months that people may not utilize until the fall and winter for hunting purposes. on the food plots. That work has to go on now. When you think about our moist soil management around the state for waterfowl, which is a very important component of a role that Arkansas plays in the Mississippi River Flyway, that work has to take place in the summer. So we have a lot going on. And you know, when you think of the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission, you may only think of hunting and fishing, but there is much, much more that goes on here that we don't often get out to the public. They may not be aware of that. And I'll just briefly go over some of the things that we have. Of course, we have an enforcement division, and that's where everybody's mind goes when they think about the Game and Fish, is a game warden that's going to check you while you're out in the field doing different things. But even within that division, we have a lot of components there that we have about 185 uniformed officers around the state, and we try to maintain at least 2 in every county. Some of your larger counties have 3. And within that program, we have canines, and canines aren't made necessarily to track down violators. We also use these canines a lot when we have people that get lost while they're out hiking or enjoying our great outdoors and things of that nature. So these dogs, we've got one in every district, which 12 districts around the state. And so they're a vital use for the public as well. We also have a disaster response team that responds locally around the state and sometimes out of state if the disaster is big enough, that tries to help local communities that have issues that come up and they need some extra support from search and rescue. Our team is usually a little uniquely equipped with boats and ATVs and the ability to get off the road a little better. So that team provides a service around the state. When you jump to our fisheries, you mentioned y'all had several lakes. We have biologists around the state doing sampling and making recommendations on those lakes, from a regulatory regs to stocking requests to habitat work and so on and so forth. So we have 4 warm water hatcheries and 1 cold water hatchery that help support these biologists and maintain these lakes around the state. Obviously, you can't outproduce Mother Nature, so we want to keep those conditions right in those lakes and let them take care of themselves. But from time to time, they need a shot in the arm, whether it's a fish kill or whether it's a stocking or something of that nature. And we produce close to 10 million fish annually to help bolster these requests from our biologists, and also stock smaller lakes that are attached to local fishing derbies and what have you. And then we get over on our the wildlife management side, and you know, we have 400,000 acres that we own and manage for public use. We also manage cooperatively another 3.2 million acres for public use in our state. And Arkansas is truly blessed to have these numbers of acres that are available to the public to use as they see fit. We also have 15 private lands biologists in our wildlife management division. You may be asking yourself, what do they do? Well, you know, we can manage our public lands for public use, and we do, and that's a good thing. But if we truly want to make some changes, like for quail, many of you, when you were younger, probably quail hunted, and as I did, and it was something that was not rare to see quail around our state, and now it is. And in order to bring a species like that back to where it was when we were younger, you have to do some work on private lands. And what this is partnering with those landowners and showing them habitat work that's not an all or nothing approach, that you can manage your property for cattle or whatever you may be doing, and at the same time provide great habitat for turkeys and quail and things of that nature. And it takes that private lands work. When you think 87% of all land in Arkansas is privately held, then it's going to take that work to really move the needle. And Quail is something that we're focused on, as well as turkey right now, that really needs a shot in the arm. And if we're going to have any chance at success, we have to do that private lands work. And then we have an education division, which currently has 4 nature centers around the state. We've got a 5th one being built in Northwest Arkansas. It should be open later this fall. And you may be asking yourself, so what component does that play in the game and fish world? And many of us were brought up, introduced to the outdoors as young men and women, and by our parents and other family members. And today, this next generation are not being introduced to that. And it, you know, hunting and fishing is something that is a tool to help manage these populations. And it's important to continue to educate the next generation to show how important these kind of things are, so we can hand that torch of conservation off after we're gone. And that's what these education and nature centers do. We focus on school-age kids, bringing them through, and it's a great program. You know, within that division, we have the Archery in the Schools program, where we have half the schools in Arkansas offer this, and we have about 60,000 kids annually come through this program. It's a great program. The actual state finals of this competition is held in Hot Springs. So it's great to see all the parents and grandparents out there supporting their kids. Youth Shooting Sports is another program. We have approximately 6,000 kids annually come through this program. And this is the largest program in the nation for kids 18 and under. Teaches them how to safely handle guns. And we actually had one of our young people that had gone through this program and went on to college, qualified for the U.S. Olympic team this year. We're very excited. The young lady from Wooster, Arkansas. Of course, they postponed the Olympics, so we'll have to wait a year to see her compete. And then you got hunter education, boater education, things of that nature, family and community fishing programs, which provide stockings and events in urban areas to encourage people to get out and take advantage of what we have going on. We have a mobile aquarium education program that touches 400,000 people annually with aquatic education. And I promise you this, these large aquariums, if you've never seen one and you watch kids, you don't have to polish the fenders up on these things, because those kids will crawl all over these aquariums looking at the fish, and they'll keep them shined up. It's fun to watch. Our fishing derbies, we have over 200 annually, with just over 25,000 people attending these. These are generally youth, and it's good to see them out with their parents enjoying the great outdoors. And then most people don't realize this, but I served as a wildlife officer for 21 years, and I always got accused of needing a new truck was the only reason I was given a violator of citation. And but the reality is that all dollars that are generated from violations do not come to the game and fish. They are turned back to the counties, to the school systems for outdoor education. So even though we don't like the impacts that violating has on our wildlife and fish populations around the state, those dollars are going to a good cause. I don't think the violators appreciate that much, but we certainly do. And then our teacher and our school programs, we try to incorporate as much conservation education into the schools, and we host about 60 conservation workshops for teachers annually. And Project Wild is in our schools. So we try to reach the next generation coming on and keep that conservation message flowing. We also have a research division. that deals with fish and wildlife disease, and you may be aware of chronic wasting disease, where that division is spearheading our agency efforts to manage this disease on the landscape. And it's this division also has a human dimensions person that helps us connect with the public better to understand what it is they're seeing and what they would like to see. We have a communications division. It's very important for us to communicate in an efficient manner to our customers out, and that information needs to flow both ways. So we're always working to enhance that. We've got, of course, our magazine that goes out, and we're doing more with the networks to try to, I don't know if you've seen our latest thing. It's called the Wildlife Minutes on Channel 7, and it gives just a 60-second brief message on things we're experiencing right now. And then we have all of our support divisions that help the agency go. One thing about outdoor activity in Arkansas, it's big business. It really is. When you look around our state, short of agriculture or tourism and people enjoying what Arkansas has, which is a lot in the outdoors, generates about $9.7 billion annually. And this helps drive a lot of local economies when you think about what duck hunting means to Stuttgart and areas like that. And then also, you think about what the lakes mean to the Hot Springs area. It drives a lot of businesses that are there that help support those activities. And we recognize that. Just very quickly, some challenges.
Okay.
And y'all cut me off
Coffee cup.
when you need me to stop. I wasn't told how
I
long,
brought it in here.
but I'll continue to talk a little bit about
No,
our
I didn't have any
agency.
coffee. I had to bring that in next.
Jerry, could you please mute?
I'm sorry.
Some of our agency challenges are a little bit about Game and Fish. We're a constitutionally independent agency, which means that funding that flows through our state government does not come to this agency. We have three streams of revenue. One is hunting and fishing license, and they fund all of the programs that we just talked about, whether it's education or fisheries or wildlife or enforcement or what have you. We also get, there's dollars generated from a federal excise tax that's collected at the federal level and then reallocated to the states based on your size of your state geographically and number of hunting and fishing licenses that you sell. And certain projects are available for this funding. And that's the second stream. And then our third stream is our conservation sales tax that I think 1996 was approved by the voters. So those are our three streams. And one of the national trends right now, and including Arkansas, is the decline in hunting and fishing. I think when you think about the next generation or even the last two generations, our world has become very hectic and very busy. And even our kids and grandkids have schedules that need a calendar to be kept up with. It's different than when I was a young man. I was either working or playing sports or going to school. I had about three options, and then of course hunting and fishing all that I could. But that's not the case today. Today our kids they have something going 24 hours a day, and that has moved these generations away from the outdoors now. And like I said, we're experiencing this all over the nation, and Arkansas is no exception. Now, I am happy to say that this year is the first year in the last 5 years that we're seeing a slight uptick in fishing license sales, and we hope that carries over into hunting license. And I'll say this, since the pandemic has hit, one of the activities that has stayed available to our citizens is getting in the great outdoors. The health department has said being in that open sunlight is good for elimination of the virus, and it's easy to socially distant out while you're fishing. And certainly we had turkey season that as well. And so we have seen a lot of things shut down in our society, but the fishing and hunting component did not. And so we've seen a massive movement towards those activities, and also hiking and wildlife watching, and maybe just spending time on the lake bank with your family. And outside of the pandemic, I love to see those things. I think there's more to fishing with your family than just fishing. It's quality time, and my kids are all grown now, and I'm an empty nester. And as we get back together and we reminisce about the good old days, if you will, it always comes back to times when me and my daughter or me and my son spent time, or all of us spent time together in the outdoors, exploring or fishing or hunting or hiking. Those are great memories. I don't think video games create that great of memories to reflect on. So there is a silver lining to what we're seeing right now. And I spend a lot of time walking along the river here in Little Rock in the evenings. It's where I go to get my mental health back in order. And I've just been amazed at seeing the family units that are lined up and down that river bank fishing. It's really, really encouraging to see. I love it. We have a lot of infrastructure needs, and I won't bore you with that. We're an old agency, and we've built a lot of things along the way over the years. We've got 350 miles of levees that need constant maintenance. We have over 100 fishing piers, 400 boat accesses, 40 dams, and we can go on and on and on. And we also maintain roughly 50 what they call GTRs. These are green tree reservoirs that are designed for waterfowl, migratory bird habitat. And a lot of these areas were built 50 years ago. And y'all know as well as I do that precipitation rates today don't look like they did when we were young. When we were younger, an inch rain was something worthy of news. Now, an inch rain is just an afternoon shower. 10 inches of rain is getting to be common, and these systems cannot carry that amount of water. And what we're seeing is those last remaining tracts of bottomland hardwood are beginning to suffer from this, and we have to get a solution for that, or we're going to see these systems leave, and that's going to be real sad. And so we're working on how do we do that. These things are very expensive. They're all wet areas that have to be done. You got about a 90-day window to get in there and get anything done. So if you're talking about large-scale construction, that's a problem as well. And so we're trying to manage those components as well. But we've got a lot of good work still continuing. Like I said, the most positive thing right now is we're seeing a large push from our citizens around the state back into the outdoors, enjoying what the good Lord has blessed us with. And I'm hoping that stays even when the virus leaves us and we come out from under the restrictions that we find ourselves in today, that maybe it has resonated with our people and they'll continue these activities. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions you might have of me.
Yeah, thank you so much, Pat. Thanks. That was super informative. I had no idea Arkansas Game and Fish was in charge of levees and dams. That's also part of your?
Well, it is. And when we think about this, and this is part of our current conversation, we obviously don't have them all, but we have our fair share. And when you start looking at maintenance needs, there's times you wished you didn't have them when it comes to a financial standpoint. And and especially boat accesses. You know, when you think about 400 boat accesses, and almost all of them annually need something. They need to be mowed. They need a load of gravel. They need a piece of concrete extended on them. And so as I transitioned into the director's seat, started thinking about the future. You know, sometimes you get people call and say, I'd like to donate to Game and Fish a piece of property for a public boat ramp. And in the past, I mean, we love that concept, love it. And in the past, we would have jumped on that. But I'm thinking in the future, we might want to think about how do we partner with somebody on that. Maybe the county, maybe we donate the land to the county, the Game and Fish build the boat ramp, and then the county maintain it for with the equipment that they have there locally. And maybe we can share that burden a little bit for the maintenance that has to be scheduled for these facilities throughout eternity.
Great.
So that's just a concept that we're talking about, but we have a lot of stuff and it's old, and it puts it takes a big old bite out of your budget every year.
We'll open it up to any other questions from other committee members. Any other questions?
Diana has a question.
Diana?
What is your total budget? I mean, you identified your big sources of revenue, but how much are you in total talking about every year?
It's roughly about $85 to $87 million. Each one of those three streams that I mentioned are about the same proportion, maybe not exactly a third on each one, but close.
And you could use about 3 times that, right?
Yes, ma'am. You just made me smile real big, but I understand, and I think that is the case with anybody that's running any business, or certainly any government always needs more money. And I think for us, there's a combination of how do you get down that road. And like any company, there's things that we could do better and be more efficient. I think that this pandemic has forced us into situations where we're doing business a little different internally. I'm hoping externally you can't see it as far as the customer's concerned, but it has shown us that we could operate in a different manner that could save us money. What I would like to see is dollars shift from an administrative standpoint, more point outwardly, more dollars to the resource. That's where my heart is, and I think that's where our agency mission has remained, that we are to manage the resources of this state for sustainability for the next generation and the next generation and the next generation. And the less money we spend on administrative cost, and certainly finding new strategic alternatives to future projects and sharing some maintenance across different agencies might provide for more dollars internally going that direction.
We heard very similar comments from the Arkansas DOT a couple of months ago as well. Any other questions? Other committee members have questions?
I've got a couple of questions, Greg.
Yeah.
Pat, what's the status on duck hunting? I got the impression that the duck season last year was not a very good season by comparison to years past, and wonder if you'd want to comment on that. And then I have one other question after that.
Okay, great question. I think you'll hear more of that type of conversation, obviously, as we get closer to duck season. Last year was better than the year before. The year before was maybe the worst duck season that we've had in Arkansas. And it's not just about ducks. It's, you know, this thing drives a lot of different things too. Even beyond the resource, you have a lot of businesses, little towns that depend on those hunters coming in and staying in motels and spending their money. So it impacts them as well. But from a resource standpoint, we do know that ducks from our estimates are down. And what's happening is most of these waterfowl, they go back north in Canada and they get in the prairie pothole regions, and that's where they nest. And you can almost write it down that when it's dry up there, then the nesting is going to be poor. And that reflects in numbers of ducks coming down. So we're in a little bit of a dry cycle there. I wish some of this rain and water flowing down our rivers and out of our rivers here could somehow translate to the nesting grounds up there to provide us more ducks. So I can't tell you, I don't know what the estimates will be for this next year. I will say last year was better. And it's not that we had more ducks last year. It depends on your water too. If everything's flooded, then you spread those ducks out. And from a hunting standpoint, or even from bird watching standpoint, it looks as if you don't have any ducks because they're scattered out so far. And then when you take the same amount of ducks on a smaller amount of water, then it looks to be more. So that's kind of what we experienced last year. There is not, from a regulatory standpoint, the Fish and Wildlife Service gives us parameters to operate in based on these nesting estimates. And so there's no big changes coming for season lengths and bag limits and things of that nature. So those numbers are staying about the same.
The other question I had, Pat, was, are we making any headway on the chronic wasting disease?
That's a great question. So I guess my response to, as far as are we making headway, we are managing to slow the spread of that disease. That's really all you can do. When you're talking about wild, free-ranging animals versus a captive wildlife facility or a cattle operation, it's a little easier to treat animals there. But when you're talking about free-ranging wildlife, it's much more difficult. And CWD for a deer or an elk that gets it, it's fatal. 100% of the time, it's fatal. And so we know that up around Newton and Boone County, we've got a 4-county cluster up there that is kind of our epicenter. That's our highest prevalence rate up there. We want to try to manage the other counties that have positive samples in a way that we can keep those numbers down. I don't know that, especially in our hottest counties, you'll never eradicate it. I mean, it's there. And what we try to avoid is once these younger female deer, once they become positive, if they become CWD positive before they can reproduce, before they can replace themselves in that population, then you see the population start on a downward trend. We may actually have some of that started in that 4-county cluster in North Arkansas, but we want to manage through regulations as best we can, and keeping that prevalence rate low to where that doesn't happen statewide. Deer hunting is a very, very big thing in Arkansas, and it's very much a needed tool. We kill over 200,000 deer a year. Now, I want you to think about what that looked like when we were young, when that was just unheard of. And now, every 5 years we kill over 1 million, harvest over 1 million deer, and it's needed to keep that population down. We could probably stand to even kill some more, harvest more. I know in our urban areas, you're starting to see a deer problem. When you have cars hitting deer in town, you have deer eating shrubs and landscaping stuff, and they're good to look at, and I enjoy that as well. But at some point, those populations start to be problematic. So anyway, my point in saying that is we're doing all that we can through a regulatory process to manage that CWD, and some of the restrictions and it's actually the other way around. It's removing restrictions. So in our CWD management zone, which is about 18 counties, don't quote me on that because I don't have it in front of me, but you know, the 3-point rule is not in place anymore. You can kill anything you want. And the point is those young bucks have a tendency to roam. And if they're CWD positive, then you're statistically more likely to spread that disease by those young males. So we want the public, if they want to be able to take one of those. Certainly feeding, kind of like the coronavirus, what we've seen when the governor closed restaurants, clustering deer is a good way to spread infectious disease, and our feeders on the landscape do that. Now, we still allow for that during the hunting season because we didn't want to lose that harvest number. It's important for us to maintain taking those deer out of the herd to manage that herd for other disease and just keeping it below carrying capacity. But that was one thing that we stopped for 8 months out of the year, is not allowing feeding because we don't want them clustering up. Now, a common argument is, well, they do that in the wild on their own, and we can't control that. If a white oak tree has a lot of white oak acorns, sure, there's going to be a lot of deer gather under that, and the game and fish can't control that, but we can try to at least reduce that risk some by taking those feeders off the landscape during the off season.
For the past 12 years, Pat, we've had here in the village. Do you believe we should continue to do that? We do it for the purpose of trying to cut back on our deer herd.
No, absolutely. And I commend y'all for doing that. And there's a lot of reasons why that's a good thing. One is you need some harvest, and these deer have shown that they'll move into your communities like you're describing, and they don't have any problem. They know there's plenty of food there, and they're going to continue to reproduce, and that's going to create a problem. And eventually there's going to be a disease component to that. And I know that the Hunters Feeding the Hungry come to your community and take part in that, and get a lot of deer donated for some of our hungry families. And so that's a good thing. Yes, I absolutely think you should continue that.
And Diana has a question.
Well, I don't have a question. I'd like to comment that next Wednesday in our board discussion session at 3 o'clock, our common property, forestry, and wildlife management manager, Todd Knowles, is making a presentation to the board. I have a little heads up to what he's going to talk about. I don't want to ruin his presentation, but he's going to talk about this urban deer hunt and what a benefit it is, not only to controlling the population, but how many lives we impact with the feeding program from the Hunters Feeding the Hungry, and how many children's lives are enriched by that. And so this board is very much in favor of that program, and we're working on that already, and we appreciate everything that Game and Fish, that the Arkansas Department does for our village. We have a great partnership with them. They also work with our Lakes and Ecology manager, Brad Meredith, and I just can't thank Pat enough for what his department does for our village and the relationship that we have together.
I appreciate you saying that, and I would agree with the presentation. And you specifically mentioned children as far as what's being fed, and I don't want to steal his thunder, and I've not seen it, but I'll say this: the Hunters Feeding the Hungry program in the last 4 or 5 years has started a snack stick program where they take deer and they partner with a organization that packages that deer meat into like a beef jerky stick. And you know, we have a lot of kids in our schools that do come to school hungry, and this program helps the school provide some protein for these kids, and it's done in a way that you can just stick it in their backpack. They don't have to necessarily eat it in the cafeteria. They can even take it home with them. And so this is a win-win-win, I promise you. And I commend y'all for taking that position. I also think it's very good for your community to keep those numbers under control. And there's more cities moving in that direction. You know, it's kind of a process you go through when you buy a place and you see deer on your place. That's wonderful. I love that too. But it reaches a point to where if there's no controls over that population, that eventually Mother Nature is going to take care of it, and it's not going to be pretty. She does that through disease and things like that. So this is a good program, and my hat's off to y'all for being one of the leaders in the state and in doing that.
Thanks, Pat. One last comment that goes to John Paul.
I would be remiss if I didn't have you here and didn't ask this. I talk to the old timers all the time about the reason that the quail population diminished in Arkansas. And I've heard 20 different stories from parents to whatever. What's the real reason that you believe that happened?
Yeah, I share in, you said you've heard 20 different reasons. I've probably heard 50. And there's probably not a consensus on that one thing that created this. I think from our position, there may be some contributing factors that have maybe accelerated it, but for us, it goes back to habitat. And we have, in the last 3 to 4 years, made quail a high priority, bringing back. And I'm going to tell y'all something, that in places where we have strung together some habitat work on private lands and our public lands, we are seeing some numbers creeping back to the good. So that would say, if you bring the habitat back, and I'm not talking like it was 100 years ago, we'll never do that. But there are ways for us to manage better for quail, and quail management also is beneficial for turkey management and other ground nesting birds. But there's a private lands component to this too that's really starting to pick up some steam. And people that own 20 acres here or 40 acres here, they're realizing that it's not all or nothing. You don't have to sell your cows to grow quail. You can do both. And they just need some guidance. And I believe that over time, we're going to see these birds come back. And my son is 26 years old, and he hunts as hard as anybody. And I don't know if he's ever seen a quail in the wild, and that breaks my heart. It really does. And I do not want any species leaving our state without at least putting up a fight trying to keep it here. Quail is a wonderful thing, and we are seeing a very slow tick up in places that we're working, and we're hoping to accelerate that and keep that momentum going.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pat. On behalf of the Government Affairs Committee of Hot Springs Village, really appreciate you coming and spending some time with us today. If you don't mind, I would appreciate if I could pass along your contact information to the committee members in case they did have any further follow-up questions that we didn't get to today.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you, Pat. Appreciate it. And really appreciate you coming by. Say hi to Pat. Bye. Thank you. And we'll continue on with the meeting now. Thank you so much, Pat.
Thank y'all. Y'all stay safe.
All right. Bye-bye. So next, I'll open up for any additions or changes to the agenda. All right. Seeing none, I'll move for a motion for approval of the minutes from our previous meeting. Do I hear a motion?
Also moved, Greg.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, we'll move along. So we'll move along and try to get through these relatively quickly. I want to try to run the meeting to try to keep it to about an hour and a half maximum every time we meet. I know it's been drifting a little bit longer. We're going to try to keep a little bit tighter control on timing and that sort of thing. And so I want to reach out first and thank David Childs for getting us some awesome speakers. Not only Pat today, but he's arranged some other speakers coming up as well. He's doing a great job of helping us get some really quality speakers in here. And I would also comment to David that some of those speakers, other clubs are now reaching out to them as well. I was with the Rotary here this week, and they had the folks from RDOT were here actually on Wednesday doing a presentation to the Rotary, the same folks that we had already previously had. So it was great to see them be able to reach kind of deeper into the community, you know, through our efforts of initially getting them connected to Hot Springs Village. So we'll open it up next to first for board report. Diana, are you still there? You're on mute.
Oh, let me see here. I'm looking for.
There we go. Am I unmuted?
There you go.
Can you hear?
Now we can hear you.
Okay. So I don't know why it'd be, okay. Anyway, well, we discussed getting the GIS mapping done as a result of the survey that you guys did for the internet situation. And you got to help me out, Greg, because, you know, I'm a technological moron here. But we have got a motion out for vote right now as I speak. It went out this morning. I played my first round of golf yesterday, and so it didn't get done yesterday, and I apologize for that. But it went out this morning, and I fully suspect that we'll get the majority vote to give you the permission, Greg, to lead that using the technology club to get that done so that we can see where we stand internet-wise with the GIS mapping. So we've done that. I've already mentioned the fact that what our discussion session would entail next week as far as the staff presentation from Todd Knowles. I would also like to say that Lakes and the Lakes Committee through Brad Meredith, our Lakes and Ecology Manager, and Ray Hurley, our Chairman of the Lakes Committee, and whoever else they want to bring with them are also going to be making a presentation to the board at that time. We continue on in our transition period. Things are coming along very well from my perspective. John Paul may have something different to add to that, but I think John Paul's doing a great job for us, and things are moving as long, even probably better than we expected as far as the transition smoothness. We're discovering a lot of things that the board did not have knowledge of before, and it's a new day, a new world, and we're going to get this running right here. I think that's about all I need to report from the board at this point in time.
All right. Well, thank you.
I'm open to questions.
Thanks, Diana. Anybody have any questions for Diana? All right, John Paul, you're the new guy. Oh, Diana, you have something else?
I'm also going to be the person that represents the Hot Springs Village on the Tri-Lakes Metro Plan. I spoke with Tom Arwood as a previous chair and a longtime member of that committee, and he assured me that he felt it was in the best interest of our community that the board take that position, that the board chair take that position. And I'm stepping up to do that. So I will be involved with that. And as they meet, I will report those things back to your committee also, to this committee also.
Yeah, Keith also reports to us on the Metro Plan as well.
Good, good.
Yep. John Paul.
Well, hello to everybody.
Do you have any comments you'd like? Yeah, go ahead.
I know most of you. Like see David Whitlow there. David and I worked together here for many years. I think most of you know me. I was director of golf for 16 years here until I retired 5 years ago. They came to me and asked me if I would step in the interim, and I am here in the interim. We'll have a new person in place at some point, and all I'm here to do is bridge the gap and kind of smooth the transition between the two. As everybody knows, we've lost 3 major positions to resignation. We've lost the HR director, we've lost the CFO, and the real estate Renee. There was,
John Paul, Renee is reconsidering that.
well, I hadn't heard that yet, but she may be.
Yeah, I just got a text. I just got a text a few minutes ago.
Well, I was just going to point out where we are and what we're doing. I've also got some other help enlisted with Dan Allward, who has come in. He is handling the overseeing of the accounting department and the transition there. And he's got some help from another volunteer that came in, Jama Lopez, who has a CPA and is very adept at our kind of accounting system and what we're doing. And they're all helping to analyze everything that we've got down there and to keep it in perspective, keep it rolling, and keep the bills being paid, and to make some observations and some recommendations in the meantime. I can let Diana speak to more of what we're doing as far as the search for the general manager, but I am one more time, I want to say I'm temporary here, and I'm going to bridge the gap and do what I can to help in the transition. But if you have anything you need from me or any questions, I'll be glad to answer in any way. I'm going to have to leave here pretty quick because I've got a lot going on. But if you have anything, hit me now with a question.
Any questions for John Paul?
I just probably have one comment, and that is for Diana and John. If you can keep Renee on the staff, I think that might be really a good idea.
Well,
I'm leaving. When I leave this meeting, I'm going to come in and talk with Renee. Renee and I have a very good working relationship, and I'm going to follow up on the text that I received just right before this meeting started today. So trust me, I'm there with you.
Okay, hopefully she'll reconsider, because she is an asset. I've worked
A big one.
Thank you for that.
All right, thank you, John Paul. So next up, I'll talk just a minute. Diana talked about the broadband survey and us trying to get that mapped. Keith and I had a meeting with the board earlier this week, and that was one of the things that we talked about getting done. And Diana, I have already reached out to the technology club and hopefully have a call with the leader of that club this afternoon to talk about how we proceed to getting that done. I have all of the survey, the raw survey data. I have all of that. So once your motion gets passed, if you could just let me a note.
I just got a text from I just got a text from Vice Chair Lloyd Sherman. I have my 4 yes votes, so we have a majority on that motion. The motion has passed, so go for it.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Next up, we'll pass along to who wants to talk about Garland County? Jim, are you here? You want to talk a little bit about Garland County? Anyone want to talk about Garland County?
Well, this is Larry Rainey.
Larry,
I have
yep.
nothing to report. I have, as we are doing now, this is what we've been doing as far as meetings are concerned, and it's basically just trying to look at ways that we can open the county back up and try to get business back up and operating. But it's going to be a long, hard pull, and as you all know, there have been a good number of announcements made by national companies about closings of offices and stores across the nation. And I think we're going to be impacted by that. However, the track looks like it's doing well. Casino is doing well, coming back. We are looking at that. So far, taxes have not been impacted, but I think the coming months, we run a couple of months behind. So this next report that comes out probably is going to look pretty bad. But there's just not a whole lot to report right now because there's not a lot going on.
All right. Thanks so much, Larry. I will say that, from my perspective as a business owner, we are starting to see a pretty significant uptick in the business. People are starting to get back out. I think they're tired of being kind of cooped up. And if you can show kind of the appropriate distancing and the fact you're doing the right kinds of things in terms of sanitation or whatever, I think people are feeling a lot more comfortable about getting out and kind of wandering around and doing things that they used to do months ago.
I would agree with you, Greg.
Yep. Metroplan. Someone want to talk about Metroplan, Keith?
Yeah, just one thing from Metroplan is they did meet last Wednesday remotely, and they're continuing to press forward with the regional trails aspect there. They put an RFQ out for the potential consultant to come in and build that entire regional trails plan. So more to come on that, but we need to, as from the village perspective and Saline County perspective, need to stay attached to that because that, you know, if we're talking, how do we tie into the regional trails
Right.
out there? So that's out there. And
Yeah,
I'll
I think
jump
it'd be
right
great
over.
if we could.
Yeah, go ahead,
It'd be
Greg.
great if we could figure out a way. I think it'd be great if we could find a way to tie our trails, you know, potentially into some of that as well.
So, and there's an issue, you know, it's always about the public-private thing that we can have discussions on. There's ways you can get around that as far as people using the trails out there. I'll jump right over to Saline County also. The big issue facing Saline County Quorum Court in the next meeting in a week and a half is the declaring a vacancy of the collector position. Joy Ballard, who's the elected collector, submitted her retirement as of June 30th. And we have 4 applicants who have applied to take that position for the 2.5 years left on her term. And the court will be interviewing those applicants on the 15th and hopefully making a decision shortly after that so we can have a smooth transition between the outgoing collector and who we're bringing in to collector out there. So I will leave it at that. And the second thing I'll talk to, and this follow up on what Greg talked about, is broadband. Judge Airy is very enthusiastic now about taking the lead on broadband across the county. And not only is it in Hot Springs Village, but there's Western Saline County, Southern Saline County, wrapping over to the east side of Saline County that has broadband shortfalls. So him and I both met, besides Greg and I meeting with the POA board here, subsequent to that, Judge Airy and I also talked to 2 broadband potential players that are interested in coming into, one is actually interested in expanding into Saline or County. They are not currently in Saline County. And another one has a small footprint in Saline County, but is interested in expanding, especially Western and Southern Saline County. So just so that the committee knows, and Greg, you know, knows that there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes on broadband. And we'll see what it all comes down to the dollars, and they're willing to make the financial commitment there. So, but Judge Airy, like I want to reiterate, he's looking at it as a county-wide perspective now, how he can help out these unserved areas in the county. Any questions?
All right. Thank you, Keith. Up next is census. What's going on with the census? Oh, David, you want to make? Yeah, David. David, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, excuse me. I do have a clarification because you jumped right over Tri-Lakes MPO.
Oh, sorry about that.
No, that's okay. But I want to clarify that we have 2 MPOs
Right.
that Hot Springs Village is involved with, Tri-Lakes and Metroplan. And Keith is involved with Metroplan or has been, and Jason sits on that also. But I believe that Diana has asked to join the Tri-Lakes NPO. Is that correct?
That's correct. And Ella got me my paperwork yesterday, and I submitted my name that I will be the Tri-Lakes person. And I noticed that you don't meet in June, but you're potentially meeting in July. Is that correct?
Yes.
And
That's correct.
you're going to get me all up to speed and teach me everything I need to know, right, David?
As soon as I get through with my surgery, which happens to be coming up. So that's going to be a little bearing, but yes, and you will be given contacting to get all the information from Emily Tiapane, who's the planning study director. And you will be hopefully ready to sit down and hit it running.
Okay, thank you.
So, and I have submitted a written report too that I presume you all have, and I'll just take any questions on that. I presume that went out with the.
Yes.
Okay.
I think Pam did send those reports. They all went out already.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's all I have then, other than everything seems to be going well on the highway construction. You're seeing some of that starting on Highway 7 and Park Avenue as far as the relocation of utilities.
Yeah, RDOT was talking about that when they came and met with the Rotary on Wednesday. So they seemed to think it was moving along relatively well. The weather had been holding, and they've been making good progress.
I agree with that.
Okay. Census.
Thank you, Greg. Like much of the other societies, census was shut down for a while for the pandemic, and I'm speaking nationally there. It is back in the field again, and by being in the field, I mean the people who are out and need to go door to door to do the cleanup from the internet and telephone and mail segment of that are back in the field. Currently, the response rate in Hot Springs Village is, we believe, and this is a bit of a guesstimate estimate, about 60%. To put that in perspective, 10 years ago, the response rate in Hot Springs Village was 72%. So there's some makeup and work to do, but we also have some time because census collection will run for, has been extended as a result of the shutdown, and will run for another couple of months. But it's important to all of us, I think, that we make sure that we and our friends and our neighbors have responded. I mean, I like to talk about the R&R. And what census has a big impact on is the money available for the roads we use and the representation that we get. And so it's very important. It takes about 5 minutes. It's easy to do. You can do it a lot of different ways. And there's a lot of information out there on it. So I would encourage everybody who hasn't to do it. And I'd encourage everybody here to promote it as you go about the world. I am surprised about the reconsideration of Renee. She has been key in this. I'm glad she is. I just heard from her about 15 minutes before the meeting too, and I didn't get that message. But at any rate, I hope she will. If not, we will have to find a way to make up for her absence. So that's where we are, 60% and rising, and we need to keep it up.
Diana, do you think we could potentially put something about the census in one of the weekly blasts to try to remind people, to fill out their census or go online and do it?
I'm sorry, Diane, I interrupted. It's been active in that form and also extremely active on the internet.
Yeah, but I just put in my notes that I needed to make a board emphasis. So when we're having our live meetings and things that are being broadcast, I want to give it a verbal plug myself.
That would be deeply appreciated.
Hey, Jim, this is Keith Keck. Do we have access to the actual data of the 40% who hasn't responded, like by address?
I lost the last part of your question there.
Do we know the addresses of the 40% who haven't responded? That's what we need to know. We can put all these blanket ones out there, but we need to be able to target that 40%. It would be nice if the census would tell us who those 40% are.
I'll work on that. I would doubt if the census will tell us who those 40% are, because one of the barriers that has handicap census through the years has been the issue of confidentiality, and they have screwed that down very tightly today in order to assure people that their information is confidential. You know, that kind of process always has two sides to it. And one of them is that while I can't authoritatively answer the question, I would doubt that it is available.
All right, thanks so much. Sherry, you want to talk a little bit about health services? Any update there?
Yeah, there is an update on the health fair that's held each year by Good Sam's, and I spoke with them this week, and that is still on hold. Know yet if they're going to have it this year. Looks like they will try to make that decision in late July for the health fair that would normally be held early October. So I have, we don't know yet. It's going to, a lot of it will depend on where we are in the stages for the COVID virus.
But it does look like they're going to potentially go ahead with something.
They're hopeful that we'll hit at least stage 2 so that they can move forward.
Okay. Yeah, the governor kind of hinted at stage 2 yesterday, so we'll see what happens. At least I think would apply to our region because we're pretty low relative to the number of cases.
Correct, and he was very upbeat with the fact that within the Good Sam system that they have not had any of the virus here in the village in the facility.
Great, that's great. Okay, David Childs, talk to us a little bit about the Benton and Hot Springs associations.
Well, the biggest news from both Benton Government Affairs and also from the Downtown Hot Springs Association is both of them in the last month have been talking about how they are beginning to open back up. Benton Government Affairs said that for about the last 3 months, they have not been conducting any groundbreakings or ribbon cuttings to help with social distancing and that sort of thing. And they will now start to schedule some ribbon cuttings and some groundbreakings to catch up on the ones that haven't occurred over the last 3 months. Of course, that's doubly good news. It's good news that people are getting together, and it's also good news that they do have some ribbon cuttings and groundbreakings that need to be done. So that's good. From Downtown Hot Springs, the Downtown Hot Springs businesses sort of officially reopened on May 15, and an interesting piece of news from them is they say that they think since they reopened in mid-May, they may have as many or more customers that are visitors rather than Hot Springs residents. So they're seeing a very, very high percentage of their total business from visitors coming in to visit. And that's about it.
Yeah, I noticed I was downtown Hot Springs last week, and there were a lot of people down there. Since the visitor center reopened, the National Park Visitor Center, I think you're seeing a lot more people down there certainly walking the streets. I went to, what's the name of that ice cream shop down there? I got ice cream last week, and there were a lot of people. There was a long line of people. Even standing 6 feet apart, there was a long line of people to go in there. So that was great. It's great to see the downtown area picking back up. Larry or Keith, did you have anything else you wanted to add relative to the counties?
This is Larry. No, I do not. Thank you.
Pam, website? We doing anything on the website? What's up with that?
What we're doing is just posting as we need to, except I didn't get this meeting up there. Bad me. But I think we're up to date with papers and reports that are up there, and we have not at this point turned over the website or turned it down. We were asked to do that as many of you know, we were basically asked to take down the GAC website and just use the POA committee part of their website. But we have so many papers up on ours and so many white papers, so much research. And at this point, they don't have any means to handle those, to get people to them. So until they can do that, our site stays.
Okay,
Is there
so
a
Pam,
link to our site?
go ahead, Diana.
Do they link?
Diana, they have in the past, but we were told that the POA was going to remove their link to the GAC website from the committee page. So I don't know if they've done that. I haven't checked recently.
Well, you need to bring that before the board, Pam, because we can prevent that from happening.
Pam, I can check on that and see. I know I was asked to go through the GAC website and look at duplicates. And I did a whole list, but that's been a month or so ago. So, but I'll look and see if the link's been there and I'll report back to Diana.
That'd be great. You need, Ella, you need to let the GAC know also, because that's their website.
Yeah. So you let me know, Ella, and Pam, I guess you'll send me the information about how to post on the website so I can make sure we keep the reports and everything going there.
We can, I'd be happy to do that. And if you would like me to continue as an outside resource and keep working on the website, I can do that too. So just let me know what you want to do.
Definitely appreciate your help with that. That would be awesome. Next, we'll hear from our schools. Looks like Dr. Murphy's on with us. Dr. Murphy, what's happening down there in Fountain Lake?
Well, we're into the summer. Got quite a bit going on, but I'll just try to keep my report brief and just see if there's any questions. But the first thing that would bring you up to date since last time is the AAA has embraced, that's the athletics component of the Arkansas Association. We do have students returning to campus on a very limited basis. It's called our phase 1 of learning, bringing students back on campus, exercising social distancing. Employees are taking temperatures, and so we're following the guidelines and learning as we go there. But we've had a pretty productive week. This was our first week to have students interacting with employees again. Secondarily, we attended a webinar yesterday from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, in which they're rolling out a ready-to-learn model of learning, in which public schools moving forward, as they are indicating it, will be required to do on-site instruction, a blended level of instruction, or virtual instruction. As they indicated, we will be required to pivot to new learning remotely in the event that we can no longer have students attending based on cases. So we're formulating a committee that, we've got to involve our health community, our nursing staff, because it's one thing to reopen, but if you have a test positive and then you have to go through that chain of finding out who may have been in contact, and you have a wide number of people that may have to stay home for 14 days, we're going to be responsible for kind of overseeing those components as well. So it's definitely a daunting task. We're scheduled to reopen on August 17th, but we have not been given specifics as to the requirements that we'll be faced with at that time. It could be as stringent as running 2-tiered bus routes to possibly rotating schedules. Our goal will be to serve the population. We want to serve them consistently because our targeted audience of parents needs to be able to rely on us to go back to work. And so we're a very hinging factor on stimulating the consistency within the economy. And we've had superintendent representation at a state level as they've looked at the reopening of the economy, because that's all. It's all a conduit. It works closely together. And as you well know, when we were trying to reduce the curve at the point in time of the initiation of the pandemic, public schools statewide basically shut down. And the only option for learning was some form of remediation. We're going to have to be able to deliver new learning going into this next year and be able to do that remotely. Our greatest challenge, Keith kind of echoed that, Saline County is aggressively looking, Garland as well, but connectivity is that essential balance to deliver remote learning with some form of consistency. And as a leader, the number one thing I see that we're going to face is this is going to really increase the inequities that exist for children in public schools if we can't resolve the connectivity issue. And so we are trying to teach them asynchronously versus synchronously, and that is, can we teach them to work online, offline, and what's the steps that we take? I will tell you that the state used their CARES Act money to purchase a base level learning management system, and they've spent several millions of dollars to allow public schools to have access to a relatively robust digital curriculum on a statewide basis. So just to bridge that gap, it'll be available for a 1-year interim, and then all public schools will have to figure out how to embrace that digital content in the event of school closures moving forward. So that's a pretty good overview as we head into the summer. We're monitoring very closely where the guidelines are, how we'll continue to phase in. The irony of this whole thing is we are seeing kind of an uptick in the number of cases, and ultimately that may create heightened restrictions as we go into August and September. So we just have to be very fluid and flexible and do the very best we can to plan to serve the public in that regard. So that's kind of an update at this point in time.
Looks like Bob has a question. You're on mute, Bob. We can't hear you. Bob, you're on mute.
No, I didn't have a question. I was just typing the notes.
Mike, do you still? Yeah.
No, the other Bob.
Okay.
Mike, do you still have plans to have your actual graduation in late July?
Yes, at this time, I put that out in kind of the last district newsletter. I've got a senior edition that's going to be going out just because we couldn't do much for our seniors. And in that senior edition of acknowledging the seniors, doing kind of a digital photo op of their year, I did indicate that the graduation is tentatively to be held at the convention center on July 31st. The students had kind of requested that be the approach for graduation.
Good.
That was Pam's dogs.
No, they heard one of the other dogs on the thing barking, and then it started them up. So whoever's dog started it, blame them.
Oh, Dr. Murphy. All right. Any other committee or any other reports from any committee members? Any others that we didn't get to today that want to make some additional comments? All right, we'll move on. Next on the agenda, on old business, we had an update of the status of the economic impact study. Has that moved at all? I mean, is it kind of still in COVID mode? Remember who was heading that up?
We're in holding mode right now. Bob Petty has, if I'm correct, Bob, are you one of the people that stepped up to work on that?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and then we just need one of the more senior committee members so that anyone that's gone through it in the past can be a help. But we're waiting for the funding, which I believe has been approved by the board. And Bob Petty has the contact information from Jerry Urick, I believe. Is that correct, Bob?
Not yet.
Okay, so we'll make sure that you get that information. And that's where it is. It won't happen until 2021 anyway, after the census.
Right.
So that's the dogs in my report.
Okay, candidates forum for the 2020 elections. Do we have any update on that happening?
We still need to identify a committee.
Volunteers. Yep.
Yeah, we need volunteers. I think Mike Hood said he was interested. Is that correct, Mike? You're on mute. Mike, you're on mute. Follow up on email, Greg.
Okay.
Oh, here he
All right.
comes.
Hey, Mike?
Yes, I can hear you. Hello.
Yes, the candidates forum, are you willing to help kind of start getting that organized for us?
Sure, I'll help. I'll be on a committee.
Okay. Who else can work with Mike?
Yeah, you know, it's kind of the same thing again. If we could have some of the one or two of the more senior committee members that have done it before, yeah, it'd make it much easier. Otherwise, Mike is basically, you know, trying to start from scratch and reinventing the wheel.
Who headed that up the last election cycle? Do you remember?
I can't remember. Let's see, I think Kurt was on it. I'm trying to remember who was all on it. There were 4 of us. And I'll send over all the materials that I have, the letter that went out to all the representatives. That was an invitation. I'll send all that over to so that you have that.
Okay.
Okay. And I can go back and see who was on the committee too.
Okay.
I'll be happy to work on that committee.
All right. Thanks, Kurt.
Yay, Kurt.
And then, Sherry, any update on the health services directory?
I think it's ready to go for the website. They're just trying to put it in a website format.
Okay.
Is that right, Pam?
Correct. We're trying to make it pretty.
Okay.
We're trying to make it look better. Right now, it's just an Excel spreadsheet. And if
Right.
we want to share it with the Board of Realtors and everyone else, it'd be great to get it in a little bit more eye-appealing format. So,
And that's another thing that
Go ahead.
That's another thing that might fit well on the POA website. I see you done. That might be a good thing to have on the POA website as well, because that would be something that would be of significant interest to new.
Right. Once we get it in that format, and I'm not sure, Pam, who is working on that.
I have one of the other villagers volunteering, someone that's very familiar with Publisher. I work with her on a newsletter. So I gave it to her.
Okay.
Yeah, if you get past that along, then we can make sure to follow up on that.
Will do.
Diana, you had a question, comment?
Well, I don't have a question. I have a couple of comments. One on the medical directory website. We have a young woman on staff that currently, she's a minimum wage employee. She moved to the village to live with her grandparents. She's a fairly recent graduate with a graphic design degree. And we maybe could find some staff time that she could utilize where we're paying her, but she could help pretty up this and do some graphic design for this medical directory. Just a thought that just went through my head. It was just a light bulb moment.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, there's so much talent around here that we haven't been utilizing, and that's a possibility to utilize this person, because she's been working as a monitor down at the POA courts, pickleball courts, and I'm not so sure that that's the best use of her time with all the talents that she has. So John Paul and I would have to discuss this, because he's in charge of all the people, and I know he's left for other meetings, but that thought just popped through my head that maybe we could utilize her to help us with that so we could get it published, because the medical directory is very, very important to our population base. And then the second thought that I had, and I couldn't get it in time when you were talking about the candidates forum, was could we maybe seek the assistance from our Republican and Democratic clubs and maybe the chairs of those clubs would like to help with the candidates forums? Just a thought.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We need to reach out to them as well. I think we did, I think, involve them in previous, because we had both. I think if I remember correctly, we kind of had a Democratic forum and we had kind of a Republican forum. We had talked about that in a previous meeting. Did we talk about something like that? Or it was counties? That's what it was, wasn't it? We did the different counties before, Democrats and Republicans for each county. So
That's a great
that's a good idea,
suggestion,
though.
though. Yeah, add some more bodies to the committee.
Absolutely. Okay. Any other comments from any other committee members? Well, probably the most important thing that we're going to talk about today is recognizing Jerry Yerrick for his years of council experience, contribution, everything that he's done to help the Government Affairs Committee. I have seen, I don't know how many papers that Jerry has done on the website. I know it was a big help to me when I joined the committee, just reading through some of those things that you had done in previous years. And we're really going to miss you. We hope you will come and visit us again from time to time. We would love to see you and be able to call on you for your counsel and knowledge, especially of the history of things that have happened with the Government Affairs Committee. So I just want to publicly state we have extreme thanks for you, and I hope to be able to get you some little token of our appreciation when we can get together next time in person. But I want to personally thank you on behalf of the GAC for everything that you've done for us over the years. And I applaud all of your service. Thank you so much. Do you have any parting thoughts you would like to give us imparting wisdom here?
Well, parting wisdom, I did look back, and of the 54 members who have served on this committee, I've known them all, and I've served with most of them. And 20% of those people went on to become board members. So this committee has been a really important committee for the village, and I'm just grateful for all the people I've met and been able to work with and teach me along the way. It's an important committee, and I cherish those thoughts and memories. And I am not going to withdraw from society. Politics is in my DNA, as anybody knows me can tell you. And I just thank everyone. And I'm also, by the way, glad that I'm our new business, not old business.
Well, thank you so much, Jerry. Anyone else have any other comments they'd like to add? I know that everybody's really enjoyed working with you over the years. Yes, David, you're on mute as well. Ella, you can go ahead and unmute everyone, please.
Okay.
You know, I just like to thank Jerry because he's been my mentor this past year, and whenever I had a question, he was always there to answer it and to share his wisdom, and it really made a big difference in just kind of keeping me organized so that I could keep the GAC organized. So thank you so much, Jerry, and keep writing those papers and turning them into the GAC.
David, I think you had a question. David Whitlow, you were on mute a minute ago. Or comment. Yeah, we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm unfamiliar with where the mute and unmute is, but I did want to just say to Jerry that it has been great working with him or with you, and you know, we are fortunate to have him here in the village with such credentials that maybe not everybody's aware of, but he certainly has many years of experience, and it's not every day you get a professor emeritus that can sit down and just talk with and help work on things. So Jerry, I know you're an avid fisherman, so maybe you'll take a little extra time and do some fishing now that you're retiring again from this committee.
Any other comments?
Jerry, I just want to say, as one of the old timers who goes back to even before you came on to the scene, there's no way that we can really express fully all that you've meant to not just to this committee, but to the POA and life here in our village with your insight and your direction and your leadership. And I really say thank you, my friend, because you've been invaluable.
You know, I'd like to add in that I do have one puzzlement here. And when I joined the committee, Jerry was one of my mentors. And now I'm noticing increasingly that I'm getting referred to as one of the old timers along with him. And I'm not sure how all that happened, but Jerry, you know what I think? It's been a great pleasure. And Jerry and I will continue to kibitz most anything that goes on.
I would just like to say that, Jerry, I'm very disappointed that you won't still be on this committee in helping me and this current board, but I have by email, and I will keep it in case there's any ever dispute, where you have said that you would be available to help us. And I'm going to hold you to that. So thank you. And I know that your boots cannot be filled.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. And thank you again, Jerry, for everything you've done for the GAC. We really appreciate it. And we wish you well, and we hope to see you. And I hope you catch a lot of fish. You invite us all to some giant fish fry before too long. That would be a lot of fun. We're going to move to the next section of the meeting for election of the chair and vice chair for the upcoming term. So I think, Diana, you're going to conduct that vote and request nominations.
Do we have any nominations from the floor for chair?
I would like to, this Jim's on, Madam Chairman.
Yes.
And I would like to nominate Greg Jones for chair.
And I would
Greg,
like
do
to
you
second
accept that?
I'll second that.
Yes, I do.
Okay. Who was there was a male voice in the first, second. Who was that?
I think it was me.
Somebody seconded.
It was Kurt.
Kurt? Greg, do you accept the nomination
Yes.
to be chair of the Government Affairs Committee for the 2021 year? You do?
I do. Yes.
Are there any further nominations for chair of the Government Affairs Committee for this year? There being none, I call for a vote. I don't have benefit of monitoring by Zoom, so I'm going to call for a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Are there any objections? Are there any objections?
No.
Greg, it's unanimous. You are now the chair of the Government Affairs Committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Good luck.
All right. Thank you.
I would now like to open up the floor for nominations for vice chair of the Government Affairs Committee. Are there any nominations for vice chair?
This is Kurt Malone, and I'd like to nominate Bob Petty.
I'll second that. This is Jim Zond.
Okay, I'm writing, so give me just a second here. Are there any other nominations for vice chair of the Government Affairs Committee for the 2021 year? Okay, Bob, would you accept the nomination for vice chair of the Government Affairs Committee for the 2021 year?
Yes, ma'am, I will.
Great. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
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 Are there any opposed? Bob, you are unanimously elected as vice chair
Thank you.
of the Government Affairs Committee, and I want to thank you for stepping up to do this. You will fill in for Greg as he needs you, It's already laid out, mapped out what your duties are in your charter. Should you have any issues with your charter, you may bring those to the board for our review, and we will work with you to fix those issues. And we will work with you in any way, shape, or possible form that we can for your continued success as you go about to serve our wonderful village and our Property Owners Association. And this committee plays a key and vital role for our association. And that role will be enhanced next year as we work on the economic impact study and as our state legislatures go back into session again. So I want to thank you all for what you're going to be doing and your leadership and guidance, and for your patience with me and in educating me as the newest board member to your committee. And in that regard, I thank you for the honor, and I will do whatever I can to help this committee, as will the rest of the board.
Great. Thank you so much, Diana, and thank you for other committee members for your confidence in me in becoming chairman for the coming year. We will be looking for a secretary, as Bob is now going to move into the vice chairmanship. If anyone is interested, I would definitely like to talk to you. I think we've made, and I think Bob has made huge strides in helping us understand how to be a good secretary with some of the recording and transcription and things like that we've done. So we will be looking for a new secretary. Is anyone interested that was willing to step up to do that at this point? Okay, we're gonna have to draw names out of a hat then, I guess. We'll talk about that at the next meeting. In the interim, Bob and I will figure out how we record at least the next meeting until we get official secretary appointed for the Government Affairs Committee. Our next meeting, by the way, will be on July. Our July meeting will be July the July the 7th, 9 o'clock in the morning. I hope that we will be able to resume our in-person meetings for our next Government Affairs Committee meeting. Hopefully we can resume and meet again at the Pond Center the way we had been meeting before. If for some reason we are unable to do that, we'll continue with the Zoom meetings as we have done for the last couple of meetings. So with that, I'll take a motion for adjournment.
Craig,
So
Jason,
moved.
All right.
yeah.
Thank you so much. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're done. All right.
Greg,
Sorry about
one
that.
thing.
We're 10 minutes over, but we're going to try to keep it to an hour and a half, as I said. Bob, did you have a comment real quick?
Yes, I would just ask Ella if she could send me the recording of
Yes.
the meeting so I can do the notes.
I will do that.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're
All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll talk to you again soon.
Hey, just one thing, Greg.
Yes.
You
go
know,
ahead.
we can do Zoom from the Ouachita. And so
Yes.
you could, if push comes to shove for July 7th, we are set up in there with social distancing at our tables for the board. And we could accommodate some physical attendance and some Zoom attendees if you all want to do that on July 7th.
Okay. I think we'll as we get close to that meeting, we'll kind of figure out where we are relative to the guidelines, and then we'll kind of make a decision. Probably the week before that, we'll send out the announcement when we
Right.
send the
But just wanted to let you know the option was there. Thank you very
Great.
much,
Thank you.
everybody. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Hey, Greg,
Yes, go ahead.
July 7th. Would you check that date? Because I think that's a Tuesday.
Oh, no, sorry. My calendar went to August for some reason. You're right. It should be July the 3rd. July the 3rd.
That's a POA holiday. That's a POA holiday.
That's a
That's a
holiday.
POA
That's a
holiday, is
POA
July the 3rd?
holiday because of the 4th of July.
Okay, so should
The
we move
10th.
it to the following Friday then, the 10th?
Yes.
Okay, we'll schedule it for the 10th.
All right. Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot.